Not tonight. I got work to do.
With Daredevil Born Again Season 2 right around the corner, what many fans consider to be the definitive version of the character is set to return to TV screens via Disney+, adding to the long history of the character throughout comic books, television, and movies, both before and after the creation of the MCU. But what if I told you that the superhero's first appearance in a motion picture with Ben Affleck's 2003 Daredevil almost received a sequel?
No, not you, Seamus. Ah, poo.
No, an actual sequel that would have taken the hero to an even darker place than he'd ever gone before, all the while expanding Fox's Marvel Universe into a bold new direction that would have introduced new villains and heroes by adapting the works of Frank Miller and Kevin Smith. Let me explain. When Daredevil released in theaters on February 14th, 2003, it received less than favorable reviews, but still dominated the box office, making $100 million in profit, thanks in part to the Valentine's Day box office boost. Propelled forward by Daredevil's financial success, an Elektra movie was quickly greenlit and released in 2005. And although a Daredevil cameo was filmed for the movie itself, that cameo was ultimately scrapped, due to producers feeling that Ben Affleck's romance with Jennifer Lopez and then Jennifer Garner in close succession could spell box office poison, much like it did for Geely and Jersey Girl. Regardless, cameo or not, the film received harsh reviews, despite Garner's performance being praised, and ultimately failed to recoup its money at the box office. In the eyes of the studio, however, Elektra cast a shadow over the Daredevil brand, and shifted away from the hero, and redirected its focus towards its superheroes that were more consistent earners. However, before Elektra's nail in the coffin, plans were made between director Mark Steven Johnson, Michael Clark Duncan, and Ben Affleck about a potential sequel. And when you combine the individual statements of the three men, an increasingly clear picture of what a Daredevil sequel could have looked like comes into view. And to be honest, it's pretty cool. Because although the 2003 movie might not be the best representation to grace our screens, it was for many, like myself, the first true introduction to the character. And if the sequel were to be done right, it's possible it could have been a career-defining entry for the hero. To celebrate the 20th anniversary of the movie, director Mark Steven Johnson spoke to Yahoo Entertainment about the legacy and production of the film. However, near the end of the interview, he was asked if he remembered the story he wanted to tell when talks of a sequel were still on the table. In his response, Johnson outlined that he would have directly continued the story told in the first film. However, with Elektra's apparent demise, Kingpin's incarceration, and Bullseye's hospitalization, the path was cleared for new characters and stories to be told. Johnson expressed his desire to expand Ellen Pompeo's role in the sequel as Karen Page, who only made a small appearance in the first film. In the sequel, the hinted chemistry between Page and Murdock would grow into a full-blown romance, with Pompeo serving as the sole love interest to Affleck's Daredevil. As for the return of Kingpin, in 2006, Michael Clark Duncan expressed that he would be more than willing to return to the role. However, he publicly stated that he would not gain weight as his personal weight loss down to 270 pounds, which were where he felt most comfortable. He did joke, however, that he would be willing to gain back the weight if the studio paid him $20 million. Duncan's weight loss was reportedly going to be worked into the script, as he suggested that Kingpin would be constantly training in prison, hell-bent on becoming lighter and faster to defeat Daredevil in combat, much like Kingpin in Born Again.
Your step is lighter. You've lost some weight.
However, the clearest and most definitive vision of what Daredevil 2 could have been comes from Ben Affleck, who stated what source material the project would be based on. In 2004, Affleck expressed that for him to seriously return to the character, he would need to speak with Fox and renegotiate for a darker story to be told, moving away from the slightly campy style set up in the first film. And that darker story would come from an adaptation of Frank Miller's Daredevil Born Again and Kevin Smith's Daredevil Guardian Angel run. With both of these stories in conversation with one another, it's quite possible that a generationally epic Daredevil story could have been born. Needless to say, spoilers ahead. With Frank Miller's Born Again story run, we find an addicted Karen Page. After a failed stint as an actress in Hollywood, in an act of desperation, she sells Matt Murdock's Daredevil secret to Kingpin. However, with Kingpin already learning Matt's identity at the end of the movie, it's possible that the sequel would have scrapped the beginning of the story. With this information, Kingpin becomes obsessed on revenge, much like Duncan confirmed, and he systematically sets out to destroy Matt Murdock's life. Over a 6-month period, Kingpin uses his criminal network to freeze Matt's bank accounts, have the bank take away his apartments, and have a police lieutenant testify that he saw Murdock pay a witness to perjure himself. Foggy Nelson is able to save him from a jail sentence, but Matt is barred from practicing law. Matt Murdock is now homeless, penniless, and the occupation that gave him purpose beyond Daredevil is stripped away from him. We find him at his lowest, and paranoid that the world is out to get him. Just the kind of darker tone that Affleck was striving for in his renegotiation with Fox. In the interim, Ben Urich investigates Murdock's string of bad luck, suspecting that he was framed, and Karen returns to New York to warn Matt. In an act of total obsession, Kingpin hires military contractors to bring the super soldier Nuke to New York, to rain terror and stoke Daredevil out of hiding. Daredevil emerges emerges, and after a destructive battle between Nuke, the Avengers take the evil super soldier into custody. Disturbed by the existence of another super soldier, Captain America sets out to find the truth behind Nuke's creation. Although a brief conflict emerges between Daredevil and Captain America about what to do with Nuke, Kingpin is exposed as the mastermind behind Nuke's destruction of New York, and his reputation is destroyed. With Daredevil triumphant again, Matt forgives Karen's betrayal, and the two live together happily in Hell's Kitchen, rekindling their romance. The Born Again story is without a doubt one of the most iconic stories told about the vigilante, and it would have been interesting to see that on the big screen. Despite the first film setting up the necessary elements to use in this iteration of the sequel, it would be unlikely to see Captain America's appearance in the film, as his film rights were closely guarded by Marvel at the time. What was more likely to be incorporated as a potential plot for the sequel would have been the Guardian Angel storyline, as Kevin Smith was a longtime friend and collaborator with Ben Affleck, with Affleck even writing the foreword in the Guardian Devil graphic novel. In Guardian Devil, we find the hero yet again in a dark place, perfect for Affleck's desires to tell a darker, grittier Daredevil story. Karen Page has just broken up with Matt Murdock, and Foggy is accused of murdering a divorcee whom he is seeing after he sees her turn into a demon. Heartbroken, Matt leans heavily on his faith to support him during this period of emotional turmoil. During this, a 15-year-old who claims to know Daredevil's secret identity surrenders her baby to him. The child, claimed to be from a virgin birth, intrigues Matt, and begins to investigate the circumstances behind the child's conception as Daredevil. During the investigation, he is contacted by a man named Nicholas Maccabee, who claims the child is the Antichrist, and gives him a crucifix to protect himself against the child. Overwhelmed by the events transpiring, Matt turns to Black Widow for help. When she shows up, Daredevil attacks her, and believing Maccabee's words, throws the child off the roof of a building. Black Widow rescues the child in the nick of time, and leaves him at a church. Even more confused by his actions, Daredevil seeks out Doctor Strange for answers. Strange informs him that the crucifix that Maccabee gave him poisoned him, and caused him to hallucinate. Strange then purges the drug from his system, and summons Mephisto for more information. From Mephisto, Strange and Murdock learn that the church the baby was left at is under attack by Bullseye. Daredevil intervenes, but is unable to stop Bullseye from killing Karen, who is protecting the baby, and making off with the child. Daredevil tracks Bullseye to Maccabee's hideout, who reveals himself to be Mysterio. Using information purchased from Kingpin, Mysterio artificially conceived the baby, faked Foggy's crime using his illusions, and hired Bullseye to confront Matt at the church, all for the satisfaction of having one last master illusion before he dies of an inoperable brain tumor. In the end, Mysterio is defeated, Foggy is released from prison, and the baby is put up for adoption, and Matt seeks out forgiveness from Black Widow. Overall, some pretty heavy stuff. With the pieces set up in the first film, either idea of an adaptation could have been pulled off to make a truly epic sequel, one that I personally would have liked to see. However, it is unclear how the larger cast of characters would have been handled, as their individual character rights were tied up with other studios. That being said, Sony, like many other studios, not been above cross-studio collaborations for the sake of telling larger, more profitable stories. So it's very possible that true adaptations of these stories could have occurred.
Well, there's something you don't see every day.
Furthermore, it was rumored that Daredevil villain Mr. Fear would have appeared, but that was never officially confirmed, and as of now remains an internet rumor. But alas, all the pieces were there, set up for a killer sequel. A new love interest for Matt that would have been an integral part of the story. A leaner, meaner Kingpin hell-bent on settling the score, and a brand new adapted story that could have used both storylines, expanding the world of Daredevil. Alas, it was not meant to be, and instead paved the way for future versions of the character. Affleck, scarred by the experience, basically swore off superheroes for the foreseeable future. But still remained a fan of the Daredevil character. And with the nature of the multiverse saga, Elektra returned in Deadpool and Wolverine, though Affleck's wishes were respected and his character was killed off-screen in The Void. But like many other lost movies that could have been, the potential of a film lives and dies and is born again by its script and the audience reaction to it. And if that's the case, it's screenplay or bust. Thank you so much for tuning in, folks, and please don't forget to like, subscribe, hype, and hit that bell icon to turn on notifications. They all really help out the channel. And comment down below, would you be interested in seeing these versions of The Man Without Fear on the big screen? Additionally, would you have preferred that they lean more towards the Born Again storyline or the Guardian Devil? And lastly, despite Affleck's deep opposition to returning to the character, would you like to see him return as Daredevil in a future movie? Even if you have any lingering thoughts on Daredevil, comment down below because I want to hear it. Until then, I'll see you all in the next video.